Hi everyone, nice to be here, nice to see you. So, welcome. It's a grand thing to be together, and today's talk is about simplicity and the simplicity of, I don't know, it's about simplicity, but how the magnificence inside the simplest things. So, the simplest thing I know of is just sitting Zen together. So, so good. And just feeling it. So I always start with feeling the time, feeling, well, what is it like to be you? Uh, there's some justification for this in the tradition where a student asked, what is Buddha? And the teacher, oh, my name is Wu Chow, my name is whatever it was, Sarah, Sally. And the teacher said, you are Wu Chow. You are you. Yeah. So you feel that, feel the magnificence of what it's like to just have consciousness, to be you, to be able to have your coffee, to be able to complain about your coffee, all those things. So you are you. So just to feel the time, that's what we do. I always like to do it. So what is it like to be you? One of the great koans. Ah. What is it like to be you? Buddha has summer allergies too. It's like that. So good. I think we'll just start with some meditation. The sound of the temple bell. So just feeling the time, what is it like to be you? All the many theories we have about who we are, and we notice when we sit, they are some of the things that drop away. What was here a minute ago is no longer here. What was here a century ago is not here either. Just feeling the time, feeling this wild life. Letting the meditation come to us. What is the way? Kongji, Confucius, said, this thing called the way, where does it exist? Zhuangzi said, there's no place it doesn't exist. Come, said Kongji, you must be more specific. It is in the ant. As low a thing as that? It's in the panic grass. That's even lower. It's in the tiles and shards. How can it be so low? It's in the piss and shit. Master Kongji said nothing to that. And Zhuangzi said, Sir, your questions simply don't get at the substance of the matter. Why don't you try wandering with me to the palace of not even anything? Identity and concord will be the basis of our discussions, and they will never come to an end, never reach exhaustion. Why not join with me in inaction, in tranquil quietude, in hushed purity, in harmony and leisure? Already my will is vacant and blank. I go nowhere and don't know how far I've gotten. I go and come and don't know where to stop. I've already been there and back. I don't know when the journey is done. I ramble and relax in unbordered vastness. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. So we can start with this thing called the way. Where does it exist? There's nowhere. It doesn't exist. You must be more specific. It's in the ant. As low a thing as that, it's in the panic grass, but that's lower still. It's in the tiles and shards. How can it be so low? It's in the piss and shit. Kongji made no reply. Why don't you try wandering with me to the palace of not even anything? Identity and concord will be the basis of our discussions, and they will never come to an end, never reach exhaustion. Why not join with me in inaction, in tranquil quietude, in hushed purity, in harmony and leisure? Already my will is vacant and blank. I'm not wanting things, in other words. I go nowhere and don't know how far I've gotten. I go and come and don't know where to stop. I've already been there and back, and I don't know when the journey is done. I ramble and relax in unbordered vastness. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. You can tell with a Zen story or a Taoist story, trying to make sense of it just is the same as trying, and you can stop trying. So just let it wash through you. Unbounded and measureless, wandering, free. Where is the way? There's no place it doesn't exist. Come, you must be more specific. Well, it's in the ant. Somehow we know that's not going to help. It's in the ant. As low a thing as that? It's in the panic grass. That's even lower still. It's in the tiles and shards. You can tell it's an old civilization, since broken crockery and broken buildings and from centuries ago. Everywhere you look, like wandering in Arizona and finding Anasazi shards everywhere in the sand. It's in the tiles and shards. How can it be so low? It's in the piss and shit. This Master Kongji made no reply. I couldn't do much. Okay, I surrender. So And Zhuangzi said, your questions don't get at the substance of the matter. Why don't you try wandering me to the palace of not even anything? Identity and concord, harmony and identity, they will be the basis of our discussions. And they'll never come to an end, never reach exhaustion. Why not join with me in inaction, in tranquil quietude, in hushed purity, in harmony and leisure? Already my will is vacant and blank. I go nowhere and don't know how far I've gotten. I go and come and don't know where to stop. I've already been there and back and don't know when the journey is done. I ramble and relax in unbordered vastness. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. And there's no way really to do the meditation wrong, particularly this one. But we can tell, we stop assessing and grasping and reaching and attaining just for this time of meditation. Then nothing that arises is too insignificant or wrong. You can understand the true vastness and nobility of being yourself. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. This thing called the way, where does it exist? There is nowhere that it does not exist. Even in your temple right now. If you're distracted, it's in the distraction. If you're just sinking into the meditation, it's in the sinking. So you can't do the meditation wrong, but gradually you let it carry you and you give yourself more and more to it. So we're just doing this and not other things, just this. And then there's no place where the way does not exist. And each breath, well, I might say, I suppose each breath is less creating delusion. My mind is just a little more free. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where. Where will it end? I don't know where it will ever end. So here we are. Music and there's no limit to where the way is. So I mentioned that I had in the blurb for this, I had a mentor in Australia whom I lived with for a while when I was very young, and kind of did gardening and occasional answering of correspondence, which I was terrible at anticipating what she would want to say to people. So I didn't do much of that. But and I remember asking her about, the usual, what's it all about questions. And she said, well, she really thought if she had another life, she'd be a Taoist, because it was all right to be anything, to be a house cleaner or a gardener. And in fact, it might be preferable to be a house cleaner or a gardener, because you weren't in the way of things, and like that. So or a file clerk or someone, and the idea was to look after the world in some intimate way, or to enter the world in some intimate way. And that's a very Zen image of the open hands of Kuan Yin. And I thought of Milan Kundera has a sort of famous to me passage that about he came from the Czech Republic, and was in exile, and there was all of the Soviet tanks were always looming, something that seems to go in cycles, and he felt his mother was always. He kept trying to get his mother to worry about the tanks and to do something, or to leave or something like that, and he ended up leaving. But and he said he realized his mother was always focused on the pear on the table, on the dish on the table, just like a 17th century still life, And then as he grew older, he said, but are tanks really more important than pears? He said, his character in the Book of Laughter and Forgetting says, as time passed, Carroll realized the answer was not so obvious as he had once thought. And he began sympathizing secretly with Mother's perspective. A big pear in the foreground, and somewhere off in the distance a tank, tiny as a ladybug, ready at any moment to take wing and disappear from sight. So Mother was right after all. Tanks are mortal, pears are eternal. and, and, uh, um, and so it's not always such a bad thing, to do that which is in front of you. And regimes rise and fall. And, empires rise and fall. And also planets and galaxies rise and fall. So somehow we must be connected more to the spaciousness and the spaces between the stars and things like that, because rising and falling isn't going to not happen. So, and I was thinking, and I was searching for this in my hard drive, and I came up across this little poem that sort of says the same thing, really, actually. I look at them all day, but they don't tell me much. Pear blossoms. It's a spring poem written some time ago. So, and the great Italian writer Roberto Calasso was hired by the person who had started this famous press and really influenced European and Italian culture, and Zen actually, because a bunch of Zen people have read him. But the guy who hired him, Calasso, in an interview said, well, he didn't really care about writing. He liked writing. He was an excellent writer. He liked interesting writing, but he really thought maybe gardening was better. He didn't think you should actually do anything, even run a publishing house. So gardening and eating with friends was the other thing. It was very good. It's very Italian. And so there we are. And I was thinking about the insignificance of things, and a couple of stories came to mind. When there's a big Japanese temple built in the Catskills 50 years ago, maybe, and Daibo Satsu, named after a famous pass, the Great Bodhisattva Pass in Japan. And at the opening was a very big event, and all people came in dress-up costume in Japan, and embroidered robes and things, and so people were coming in and trying to help, and they were sending their assistants to help and things like that. And so the day before the ceremony, early on the day before, this little Japanese guy wandered in and said, "Can I help?" And somebody said, "Great," and they gave him buckets and brooms, and he spent all day cleaning in his ragged old workman's clothes. And then the next day he was one of the people holding the ceremony. It was Shunryu Suzuki from San Francisco, and he hadn't ever mentioned who he was when he said he wanted to help. And it's a very nice Taoist kind of story, I think. And and so cleaning might be part of it too, precision maintenance of the universe. And I had another mentor who really valued the small things in life, and was I've spoken about him because he was a guy who was captured by the Germans, and then the Americans came through and captured the Germans, put him in charge of the people he'd been in charge of, and then the Germans came through and it changed, and then it came through again, and he said, after that, I just didn't believe in fixed points of view. So it was great. And so he became this very interesting, innovative thinker, and was a friend of Gregory Bates and Margaret Mead and people like that. But he told me this great story about the people, because people knew he liked weird problems, and they'd give him weird problems, and his friends would. And a friend was, running a hospital or a clinic or something. And one of his touching ones to me was that there was a friend who was looking at outcomes, recovery times in a hospital, and surgery recovery times mainly, but just recovery times in general. and said that on one floor, on the third floor of this particular hospital, people seemed to recover more quickly than they had any right to. And I mean, not that people, it was a very good hospital, good, good physicians, and it wasn't about who did the medical intervention or things like that. But so one of his friends said, "Could you tell me why people are getting better quicker on the third floor than the other floors? even if we send someone who shouldn't have been on the third floor to the third floor by mistake, they still get better quicker." So that sort of thing. And so he potted around. He looked at the doctors who did the procedures and all that, and nothing seemed to be very interesting. And so he just wandered in and said, "Well, somebody must be here sometimes." And he found out that every day there was this old cleaning lady came through and stopped and talked to everyone on the floor. And so he went and talked to her and said, indeed, she was very wise, but the main thing was, it wasn't that, she was just really here. She was just really present, This old African-American cleaning lady from the Bronx would wander with a mop and bucket, and as soon as they heard her coming, they'd sort of get interested in life because she would talk to them. And so there's that sort of quality about being the hidden sage, that Taoism also, that I think is a Zen thing, and you could see that in Suzuki or this cleaning lady, and it seems like a good thing. And even the things that you think, I don't know, even the things you think you don't like, it's whatever's going on for you. If you don't like what's going on, it's the world, somehow it's your fate, and it's your part in the cosmos. And it's all right. One can't say, I'd rather not, have my diagnosis, or I would have rather had a better spouse, or something like that. That may well be, but that can't be true, really, because here we are, And I would rather be wiser myself. That can't be true either, because here we are. Even you getting wiser is unlikely. And that's one of the things, if you're grabbing for wisdom, that your life is full of grabbing. And if you're, as Zhuangzi says, I go and come and don't know where to stop. I've already been there and back, and I don't know when the journey is done. I ramble and relax in unbordered vastness. And right now, you're rambling and relaxing in unbordered vastness. The vastness is in the room you're in. Or even if you're not in a room, outside the vastness. Kind of easy to see outside, but it's there in a small room as well. So if you look around your room, you can see that in a certain way your room doesn't have prejudices. It doesn't tell you you're wrong. It's all right. Being is there. The thing about the piss and the shit is kind of interesting, because it's often been in the wisdom culture to mention the thing that people don't want to face, and it might be people tend to want to get away from life into some sort of purity, and the whole Buddha story was about that, really. But the Zen people and the Taoists have often said, well, there's sex, which is the red thread koan, and there's desire and passion and love and sorrow and joy, and that's part of the whole joy of it all. There's all of that. And so there is a famous koan where a teacher is asked, what is Buddha? And instead of saying the usual things people say, he said, a dried shit stick. And thus, offending people for centuries. And and embarrassing, like, Puritan students of his and ours. But you can tell he's saying exactly the same thing. It's a very short form of what Zhuangzi said. It's in the most insignificant thing or the repulsive thing. And in fact, that's the great alchemical thing that, the alchemical. When Jung realized that apart from trying to turn lead into gold or whatever they were doing, the alchemists were transforming psyche. And they were images for transforming psyche. And the development of psyche happens through images, which you'll notice in the koans. The things falling apart and being picked apart is it too, but it's the images to follow. And the alchemists always started turning lead into gold. Well, lead was itself a pretty valueless thing, but with something even more repulsive, whatever they put, shit or something like that in their alchemical vessels to start with, And you'll notice that yourself in your dreams often start with something really painful or difficult or a quality of being lost or something like that. And so we have to value the insignificant things and then find that, that's all the joy and the gold comes from what we have rejected or ignored. It's a profound thing, which is why when people, we often try to avoid the feelings of boredom or hopelessness or whatever that we have in meditation, and I see it here where I see, people, meditation goes on a little long, people start working their phones, and you guys are good at meditation, so there's a profound thing to be restless and to be reaching for in the human psyche. And the meditation is, if you're bored and repulsed by the meditation, that's a good place to enter. So enter where you're repulsed. It's a sort of horror movie thing, I guess. But and so I had a friend who was doing Zazen in a little meditation center without a teacher. And he looked at the local paper, and this was on Long Island, actually, and he went down to light the fire in the morning after Zazen, and he grabbed the paper, and as one does, started reading the paper, as when he was about, something caught his eye. And actually, Soen Nakagawa Roshi had been to New York and had been teaching at St. John the Divine, and this is long ago. And somebody had interviewed him, and they'd said, "What is Zen?" And he said all these things that they couldn't even put down in a coherent way, And he said, you go, and then he said, and my friend remembered this from the newspaper, he said, you go to the bathroom 1 time, 2 times, and then you go to the sacred place. And so he was trying to say kind of what Zhuangzi was saying. And then my friend had a big awakening experience hearing that. Then he showed it to friends. It was a bit like taking mushrooms and thinking, all I have to do is something like that. He showed it to his girlfriend, and she said, yeah, what's the point? But it's entering into the difficult thing. And or entering into the ordinary thing. Here's Su Dongbo, great Su Dongbo, the great poet who he wasn't really a Zen person, but he was staying at a monastery and had an awakening one night. And he said, the sound of the stream is his long, broad tongue, the Shakyamuni. The sound, isn't that his long, broad tongue? The shape of the mountains is his whole body. Last night I heard 84,000 verses. How will I remember them tomorrow? So they're in us. We don't have to remember them like that. And this is a kind of, this is my homage to Sutung Po, where I woke up the other morning and there was a golden fog in the garden from sunrise and flowers everywhere. And so this was Guan Yin instead of Buddha. Gold fog and sunrise everywhere. These roses are her graceful body. So I think what I'd like to do now is call on a couple of people to say something if you wish, And I don't know. Tess, how you doing? Do you want to say something?
Oh, so many things, but the thing that's immediately comes to mind is very interested in that what repulses us, what grosses us out. I was thinking when you said that about particularly when I was a teenager, the sound of licking or any kind of like if someone would beat eggs close to me or any kind of, I would just like freak out. And because it was just so, and how over time, I was talking to someone the other day about how whenever we make general statements, they're suspicious. Like, I hate this, or I hate the heat, I hate those kinds of sounds, I hate whatever. And as soon as you stop and actually be with it for even half a second, or 3 seconds, or 5 seconds, or something, it isn't what you expect. And so even the things that, I don't know, even the things that gross me out these days, I'm like incredibly suspicious of and then get kind of curious about. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that'd be an interesting exercise for everyone. What emotion do you have that's negative, and how could you be suspicious of it? You know, like right now, like consider the matter. You know, boredom is one. Boredom in childhood, boredom was the one for me. It was like I was so bored all my childhood, which is a way of not entering into it. Really, it's a sort of monastic approach, boredom to life. And other things, or like writer's block. Creative block is a sort of, maybe it's great, you know, that sort of thing. Despair, all those things that we can enter into, you know, feeling like I wasn't treated right. All the things we have. I didn't live the right life. That's the one. I'm living the wrong life right now. Well, what if you can't live the wrong life? What if you can't screw up the koan? What if you can't, like that, you know? It's very touching, really. Then when I say that, I just feel this tremendous compassion for everything, you know, everything that has the courage to live, really, you know. The nobility of everyone's life in this temple right now. A marvelous thing, you know. John Joseph, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I really loved hearing you read the Chuangzi response to Confucius a couple times in the, it of course is the light or the Tao, and it's in the ants, it's in the panic graphs, it's in the shards, it's in the shit, in the piss, and I just got a feeling of in the everythingness, in the everywhereness quality of it, and how supportive that feels and how intimate that feels. The most simple things, it's in that. And in the shit and the piss vein, I was walking my dog. I'm up in the mountains, and I was walking my dog near a lake where the fires have started, and the far shoreline is obscured now in smoke. But anyway, teaching her how to swim, throwing sticks just beyond her reach where she would have to almost swim. And of course, she was having a great time, and so she left this tremendous two-bag poop for me to pick up, and and so I picked it up in a bag, and we crossed the street, and there was a mom with a kid, and um, she had the child in her Bjorn, and it made me think of when my daughters were babies, and I used to change their diapers, and what I really messy poop, because that meant that they were okay, that they were healthy, that they were fine. Um, so yeah, that's kind of it right now. Thanks.
Thank you. All of life is actually earthworms with an intake and an exit. So it's like that you have to take into account the whole. Everything is communicating and in some way is interconnected with life. Michelle, do you want to say anything?
Noticing your story about your mentor in Australia saying, I don't remember the words exactly, but this idea that, she would have liked to be a Taoist. So if she were, it would be all right to be anything. And that in conjunction with the idea of secret sages. And I was thinking about how we carry around with us this idea that it's our job to make ourselves special, which is like and so that's why, wow, wouldn't it be such a relief if I could have an excuse and permission not to have to make myself special, so I could call myself a poet or a Taoist, and then it's okay. And this is just, I don't know, it's just what struck me, that this tremendous relief at giving ourselves or having somebody give ourselves permission to just be where we are, and why we need that permission is really fascinating to me. And it's right here, and yet we think, wait, I need permission to be here. So I give you permission to be here. And I thank you. And I think when we come together on Sundays, that's so much part of what's happening, is we're giving each other, and John is giving us permission to just notice and be here. And it's a real blessing. So thanks.
Yeah, I've been very interested in this sort of small acts of service that we all do, where, John's teaching his dog to swim, things like that, or like last night I was sort of carrying out like a plate of dates and raisins and getting clean water for the local fox who comes every night, and thinking, so, okay, that's what I'm doing with my life right now. I'm serving a fox, I'm helping a fox. And those small attentive things we do are just part of that, that, are really recognizing how we're linked into the vastness. We're all the net of Indra, and we're all part of that great flow of the net, and each node in the net. So, just like the ants and the panic grass. So it's a nice thing, and every now and again, part of me thinks, well, I have this conflict between I should be writing more, but otherwise somebody calls up and I think I can help them, so I just do, so, like the fox, and I think, oh, well, I don't know which is better, really. There's no knowing that, and that we're in this, and I just see what happens today, what occurs today, yeah, and. Todd Geist, do you have anything to say?
Hello, everybody. Been a busy couple of weeks for me, and it's nice to be back with you. I missed the last couple of weeks. When you were talking about boredom, I was thinking, just noticing how much that's something I definitely try to turn away from whenever I encounter it. And I've been a real fan of listening to books on tape or podcasts when I'm doing chores around the house. And recently I just sort of, I guess I was just out of books to listen to at some point, or out of podcasts, or tired of them. So I started just doing my chores instead of, escaping to somewhere else while the chores are happening. And it's been interesting, making the bed, not making the bed and listening to, some book. And it does feel, it's a little bit of a struggle where sometimes you get distracted or I get agitated and I want to reach for some tiny little bit of something different than what I'm doing. But I do just feel, and I don't know what it is, a fullness, or you recognize you can feel the time passing in a way that I can't when I'm just, distracted with a book or podcast. And so anyway, that's been nice. And the boredom thing is something that comes up for me a lot when I was a kid, but even still today. And I feel like I have so much to do, but for some reason I can still get bored, and still feel like I need to go and get something different than what's happening right now. And so I've been just trying to notice when that's happening and turn towards what's actually going on instead of to the latest sci-fi novel or what have you. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's true. It's like boredom is a holding back from life and thinking this isn't it. So it's a form of suffering of some kind. Just the way if I have a headache and I think this shouldn't be happening, it's the same, really. But whatever is happening is here. This is great. Serafina, do you want to say anything? My daughter is here briefly. And somebody got you.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess there's a lot of things. The boredom thing is kind of interesting. Yeah, I really like both the theme of the boredom thing and the insignificant moments. The boredom thing immediately made me think of Adam Phillips has this article called On Boredom, which he's a British psychologist, which is he's sort of like famous for those articles that are like all about like flip your ideas on things. But and I was thinking about how there's like this sense, he's actually very pro boredom in these articles and talks about the sort of the way that like the vast ennui of most children and the way that they're bored, but how that's like really important developmentally of like discovering of discovery. But I guess I was in a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about meditation actually, and about like a couple of the things that I do for sort of self-maintenance and care are exercise and meditation. And I never stop exercising, but sometimes I stop meditating. And, for a period of time, like a few weeks or something. Even though I know from, the years of my life that both of them are very important and are some of the things that make the most difference. And I would say meditation actually makes a little bit more of a difference. But for some reason, like I stop exercising and at some point my body complains at me. But I stop meditating and then things just go wrong until I realize that I should start meditating again. But I think part of this is because there's sort of this exercising is doing something and meditating is doing nothing to some extent. And you at one point said to me, like when you were recommending that I meditate more for something that I was going through, and you said it will be a struggle because you will keep feeling like you should be doing something. But that was just sort of the thing you said about it. And I really like that. I think about that a bunch of times because I think that it is often a bit easier for me to do things like exercise because I feel like I'm taking an action. And of course meditation can be, but in the vibe of it, I don't get to attach the same type of virtue, I think, to it. But then at the same time, that itself is its own type of beauty. Like the other night, I was really appreciating just in between moments of waiting, of like waiting when like you went to wash dishes or something like that. And I was just waiting out there and I was just really appreciating the moments of just being able to do that.
Good. Thank you. Nice. Many things like that, the waiting moments and kids waiting at bus stops, all that sort of thing. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to take. I know people have started putting up their hands, and you probably have great things. I'll just take, probably just take really brief things. Dolly.
I just wanted to quickly share an experience that I think dovetails into what we're talking about. And I was feeling down and kind of useless one day, and nothing in my work seemed meaningless. And I went for a walk. And it was like walking in molasses because I was so depressed. And then a person came and he had a dog on a leash, and it was a beagle. And I'm very fond of beagles because they have kind of a smile and floppy ears. And this dog had his tail sticking up in the air. And all of a sudden I noticed I was flopping my ears and smiling and having my tail in the air. And I realized the usefulness of that dog for me at that moment in time. And all of a sudden the depression was gone, and the significance of the simplicity of a beagle with a tail up and the floppy ears and a smile on its face. And then I was saying, well, maybe what I do has as much meaning as the beagle walking along, making me happy. So the insignificance of things and how we don't really know, something that may be totally insignificant is actually very meaningful.
Well, you became a beagle. It seems like
Absolutely,
that's
completely.
going like.
And I
the
still
beagle.
with a smile and the tail. It was just profound. And ever since then, the image comes to me. Just flop your ears, put your tail in the air and keep walking, like that. So thank you.
The beagle Cohen. Thank you. Let's take Deb and or Dawn again briefly if we can.
I just wanted to say that Dawn and I live in the same condo building as my 99-year-old mother, and we are supporting her to stay there and live in her own place. And her memory is, she forgets right away what's happened in the last moment, and her contentment is really teaching us a lot about not being cluttered. But the other thing is, in finding meaning, she likes to put leftover food on the balcony to attract the pigeons or anything which of course is against the rules in the condominium. And she seems to know that we've asked her not to do that, because we'll sometimes catch her sneaking out to put it out on the balcony. And she'll have this little girl look on her face like, oh, I'm just, and then she'll make some excuse. And I don't know, it's really been a wonderful lesson on living very simply. And she's quite amazing.
Thanks. I like that sneaking out with the food for the birds. It's okay. We're going to sit again. The temple bell, the sound of the temple bell. This thing called the way, where does it exist? There's no place it doesn't exist. It's ant time or panic grass time or beagle time or cat time, fox time, just this time, right here time, sacred time for you. It's in the ant. As low a thing as that. It's in the panic grass, but that's lower still. It's in the tiles and shards. How can it be so low? The pebbles and the dirt. It's in the piss and the shit. Which was a conversation stopper. After this, Master Kungzhi made no reply. Zhuangzi said, "Sir, your questions simply don't get to the substance of the matter. Why don't you try wandering with me to the palace of not even anything? Identity and concord will be the basis of our discussions. They will never come to an end, never reach exhaustion." Why not join with me in inaction, in non-doing, in tranquil quietude, in hushed purity, in harmony and leisure? Already my wanting is vacant and blank. I go nowhere and don't know how far I've gotten. I go nowhere and don't know how far I've gotten. I go and come and don't know where to stop. I've already been there and back again, and I don't know when the journey is done. I ramble and relax in unbordered vastness. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. You just feel the silence and the time and feel like, well, this is the useless part of the morning. I could just go now, you know. Or maybe this is the good part of the morning, and yeah, it's all good all the way through. It's all for you, as one of the koans goes. But of course, what's a you? It's in the panic grass, it's in the ant. There's no boundary, we don't know where it ends. And great knowledge enters in. Enjoying this vast companionship that we have together. Your hand is my hand, your hair is my hair. We're mingled up with the sunlight and the stars. And you can tell now why there's no edge to it and great knowledge enters in. There's no point in judging how you're doing with your meditation, because you won't ever know. Which is rather wonderful. William Irwin knew John Berryman, who was a great mad poet of a previous generation. And he said he has a poem about Berryman, but he asked Berryman, well, how can I tell if my work is good? And Berryman said, ultimately, you will never know. One doesn't ever know. Because here we are in this marvelous, endless, immeasurable, unbordered vastness, all together. you can feel the tenderness and affection that appears. Or at least I can. That's why it's good for foxes and beagles and whoever throwing sticks for dogs and making guitars and gardening and all the things we do. Writing down dreams, appreciating the flight of a finch. Just listening to the 3 tree frogs left in the garden in summer at night, listening to them sing. It's enough, it's everything. The sound of the music is the long, broad tongue of the Buddha. It's in the ant. It's in the panic grass. It's in the tiles and shards. It's in the piss and the shit. It's in the, what will I do now? I should be doing something useful. Au contraire, you are doing something useful, being and breathing. And the great affection that life has, you can feel extending out through the galaxies and the strange ways they exchange stars and how long and far they are. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. Lao Tzu said, we work with being, but it is non-being that we depend on. Great knowledge enters in, and I don't know where it will ever end. And Zimborska has this wonderful poem about when wars end and there's been triumph and disaster and villains have been killed and all that sort of thing, or not. And then there's someone who has to go around and clean up and sweep the shards and replace the broken windows. And after a while, the children don't remember what the war was about, or it's not very strong in their heads. It's some ancient thing. Something we're hoping for. I want to finish with a poem about an insignificant thing by two insignificant things. This is Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. It was from feeling oneself that one had reached the last barrier, that it was horrible, but that it could not be otherwise, that there was no escape for you, that you never could become a different man. That even if time and faith were still left you to change into something different, you would most likely not wish to change, or if you did wish to, even if you would do nothing, because perhaps in reality there was nothing for you to change into. One of those things from the time of desperation. Here's a Philip Larkin poem. The trees. This is a spring poem, but good. The trees are coming into leaf like something almost being said. The recent buds relax and spread. Their greenness is a kind of grief. Is it that they are born again and we grow old? No, they die too. Their yearly trick of looking new is written down in rings of grain. Yet still the unresting castles thresh in full-grown thickness every May. Last year is dead, they seem to say. Begin afresh, afresh, afresh. So, the insignificance of the leaves that we all depend on in our hearts. Amaryllis. I think you need to play us out of here, you and Jordan. Oh, I said, thank you both. Tess keeps telling me to unmute. Thank you, Tess. Somebody's got to, you know, lead me on my leash. So thank you all. It was wonderful to be together next week again. And if you want to donate, pacificzen.org, we're thrilled, but we're always free. So, and thank you. It's a wonderful thing to do together.